Good morning, church family. It's good to be here. Good to see you all, for sure. You are traveling to another dimension. A dimension beyond the bounds of sight and sound. A dimension that only is bound by the reach of your mind. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over to the Twilight Zone. And no one did the do-do-do-do-do-do. Come on, I was like, you can't hear the Twilight Zone without hearing that. I bring that up because in the third season of the Twilight Zone, airing almost 60 years ago, that was amazing, there was a short story called To Serve Man. You may be familiar with this, you may not. I'll give you a quick synopsis of the story. A race of aliens known as the Canaanites have appeared on Earth. They have promised to be nothing but helpful. This has been their mission, is to come and help the Earthlings. Now, Earth is pretty skeptical, as we typically are. It's depicted in every one of our movies. Whenever aliens show up, we assume that they aren't nice. That's why they have to say, "We come in peace," which should just alleviate all concern, right? Because no one lies about things like peace. But the Canaanites back this up by saying, we only want to help man. And from their arrival, they begin to eradicate all of the problems that mankind has. They solve world hunger. They make that there's no reason for war and all sorts of things that they are helpful with. And even the greatest skeptics, they come to be all right with the Canaanites whenever a book that the Canaanites bring is left on a table and translators work and they finally get to the title. And the title is To Serve Man. They think, wow, they're literally here to serve. They have a book on what it means to serve man. But of course, all is not what it seems. As humanity begins to really like the Canaanites, they start signing up for mission trips. They sign up for vacations to go to the home planet of the Canaanites that is supposed to be a paradise. But the translators have continued working, and they've found out that their book, To Serve Man, is really a cookbook. I don't think that's what Jesus had in mind when he asked us to serve one another. But often this is what we do, right? Oh, I'll serve you. We serve each other on dishes. We often you just serve things straight to each other in attacks. I don't think that's what Jesus had in mind when he said, serve one another. 1 Peter 4, verse 10. God has given each of you a gift from the great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to serve one another. Whatever gift you have received it for a purpose. There is a reason and rationale behind whatever gift you have. Some may be for song leading, some may be for preaching, some may be for whatever else may happen, not just here on Sunday morning, but every day of the week. Whatever gift that you have been gifted with, the purpose is the same for each and every one of us. Use it to serve one another. Should be pretty clear, should be pretty simple. But we as a culture, we as a society, and sometimes we as a church consider our gifts to be hoarded, our gifts only to be used for my personal gain. And we miss not just the point, but we miss Christianity, discipleship as a whole. A couple weeks ago, the leadership put before the congregation a direction that we've been hearing from the Lord, that we believe that the Lord is taking us on. Now, it is not a new path. In fact, it's recommitting to an old path. The old path is the Great Commission. The Great Commission is to go and make disciples. So we put this path saying, hey, we need to, for one, become disciples so that we can make disciples. And remember, this isn't just a linear journey. It's not simply point A to point B. It's a whole lot more multifaceted, more fluid, as Pete Briscoe said last week, more spirit-led. We are following the Spirit to grow in all aspects of discipleship. And so we illustrated the growth in all aspects of discipleship by bringing up just a picture, a little graphic, using the letters WHCC to hopefully have some of you be able to remember this, because we want this to be ingrained. Worship, help, communicate, and cultivate. And we believe that every follower of Christ needs to be developing in all four of these aspects. These are broad brushes meant to understand the fullness of Christianity. You could replace other words in there to understand that we need to be growing in all of these aspects. Well, today we're going to be talking about one of them. But for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be focusing in on each of these. So today we're going to be talking about help. How we as disciples of Christ are called, equipped, commissioned, and even commanded to help others. That is our job. This is what it looks like to be a disciple. And so for daring discipleship, we're going to dare you to help. Dare you to help in a way that might be scary. Because I don't have to dare you to help in ways that aren't scary. I don't have to dare you to help out in ways that don't cost you anything. I'm going to dare you to get out of your comfort zone and to get into a place where you are helping truly for the gospel. That you are growing disciples, your discipleship yourself and disciple and others. I want to look at this also another way. For the next 4 weeks, we're going to be looking as well at the parable of the sower, because it illustrates this pretty well. Matthew 13, listen. Jesus says, a farmer went out to plant some seeds. As he scattered them across the field, some seed fell on the footpath, and the birds came and ate them. Other seed fell on the shallow soil with underlying rock. The seed sprouted up quickly, but the soil was shallow. But the plants soon wilted under the hot sun, and since they didn't have deep roots, they died. Other seed fell among the thorns that grew up and choked out the tender plants. Still other seed fell on the fertile soil, and they produced a crop that was 30, 60, and even 100 times as much as had been planted. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. Now, most of you know that I grew up on a farm. I grew up on a crop farm, okay? So I have learned through my life a thing or two about what it takes to plant crops. And every time I read this story, I cannot help but think that no decent farmer would go scattering seed all willy-nilly like this guy does. I mean, any decent farmer is going to make sure that his seed is planted in the proper place, that he is putting it in the rows that he has worked and he has planned on all these things. That's a decent farmer. That probably wasn't Jesus' point. He's not giving great farming techniques here. He's using it as an illustration. And we're going to be looking at different aspects of this the next several weeks. What I want to look at today is the good soil. Some of it fell in the good soil. The question that I want to ask is, how did the soil become good? What made the soil good? You see, as a farmer, you don't just cast your seed out. You have to go prepare the soil. Sometimes that means plowing it. Sometimes that means maybe adding some nutrients. Sometimes it's giving it enough water to where it can accept the seed. Whatever might be going on, you work the land. You work the soil to make it good. And it's not always guaranteed that the soil you work will be good, but it won't be good if you don't put anything into it. So, you work the soil. Now, what does that mean in our spiritual lives? Obviously, that is understanding in the farming illustration. And our spiritual walk with Christ, I think his point is that this is tied pretty intricately to our word help. To serve, to help. The soil has to be prepared in the hearts of people. And one of the best ways to prepare the soil of someone's heart to receive the good news of the gospel is to meet needs, to help them in what they might need helped with. But let's be honest, it's hard work, and not many of us really want to do the work of preparing the soil because it's not that glamorous. If you think about it, it's a much nicer thing to be the harvester, to come through and pick the fruit that is ripe. because you have something to show and you bring it back to your table and everyone can enjoy the harvest. But what do you have to show whenever you prepared the land? You come in with dirt all over you. You come in with not much to show except the sweat that it took. We don't want to help that much because we want results. In Mark 10:42, Jesus speaks a little into this. He calls the disciples together and says, "You know that the rulers of this world lord it over their people, and officials flaunt their authority over those under them. But among you, it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first among you must be the slaves of everyone else. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others, and to give his life as a ransom for many." In this passage, Jesus describes the thrust of the servant principle. The main push behind this understanding of the servant principle, and he uses two different words to illustrate what that leadership looks like. It looks like a servant. But for this servant, he uses two words. One is diakonos. You may be familiar with this word. This is the word we have transliterated to get our word for deacon. Often we translate it as well as to minister. This is the servant. This is the one who is serving. The word is, some of you may have heard that the idea behind this word is really that they are covered in the dust of their master. We know that it has something to do with dust cloud that diakonos does. Another rendering of that idea of diakonos is that they're kicking up dust. In other words, the servant is so enthusiastic about serving his master that he literally runs around so quickly kicking up dust that his eagerness to serve is shown in the steps that he makes. I like that understanding because to me, that right there gets to the heart of a servant. One who is so willing, kicking up the dust. But that's only the first word that Jesus uses here. And it's the nicer word. The other word is slave, doulos. And some translations have tried to water this down maybe, or at least take the impact off of it by saying, well, it's just a bond servant. In all reality, a bond servant is still a slave, no matter how you slice it. It is someone who is there because they're working off a time. They are under the rule. It's not someone who just willingly decides to serve others. It's someone who puts themselves under the authority of someone else and serves them no matter what. Jesus says, we don't lord it over people. Leadership in the kingdom of God does not look like the leadership that this world gives. You serve with the heart of with the mind of a servant, willingness and desire and enthusiastic, and you serve with the heart of a slave, knowing that I have put my heart under someone else. This is not how the world thinks of it. This is not normal. But Jesus says, I have come not to be served, but to serve. If the Son of Man himself comes not to be served, but to serve, then how much more for us? When the Creator of the heavens and the earth came, he came to serve. The holiest of holies, the highest of the highs, the mightiest of the mighty. The one person that could have required all of creation to serve him says, I did not come to be served. I came to serve. Discipleship is meant as an understanding to be like Christ. So if we're going to be like Christ, we got to serve. We got to do what he did. Simply put, we're servants. A guy by the name of Rick Ferguson wrote a book called The Servant Principle. I want to read you a passage from it. It says, servanthood is not a very popular subject. Servanthood has a cost of personal investment that goes against everything we are taught. Servanthood totally conflicts with the self-centeredness ingrained in every person. The request to deny all personal desires is never met with excitement. No one wants to hear the call to relinquish all personal rights and privileges. No one wants to accept the challenge to develop a slave's mindset. Servanthood contradicts absolutely every single thing inside of us. Everything. Everything that is, except the Spirit of God. I like how he said that. Because a lot of times we get the focus that being a servant really literally does contradict everything inside of us. And if that's the way it is, then we're missing. Because it does not contradict the Spirit of God. Christ himself came to serve, not be served. And if Christ is in us, then it doesn't contradict everything within us. It just contradicts the things that we need to change. We need to serve. It's a hard switch, though. Let's be honest. Especially for those of us that have been used to a privilege of any sort. When we have been privileged in any way, we are used to this idea. Yes, we may work our tail off and we may work for different things, but we're still used to this idea that we earn what we get, and we are served in so many ways. Don't believe me? Look at our churches. So many of the complaints that people have about their churches is that somehow the church isn't serving them. How selfish can you be in the community of faith? That somehow the church isn't serving you? Did you miss the point of Christianity? That somehow we are all here to exist in serving you and meeting all of your needs? That's not why we're all here together. The point that we're here for is to serve one another. You come to be served, but you should come rather to serve. If we came with that mindset, I would say probably 99% of our complaints as a church would dissipate. Maybe 100%. I'm not, there's probably enough legitimate ones that I can say 99%. We need to quit thinking it's all about us, and we need to start realizing that it isn't, and that we are here to serve others. Or maybe that's just too much for you. Maybe you're like, Mitch, I'm here to serve Christ. Great. You know how you serve Christ? How you serve Christ is you serve like Christ served. You serve in the same way that he did. He would illustrate this in different ways, but one of the most famous is the parable of the Good Samaritan, Luke 10. Just read through this. Jesus replied with a story. A Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him up, and left him half dead beside the road. By chance, a priest came along, but when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. A Levite or temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there, but he also passed by on the other side. Then, a despised Samaritan. At this point, the audience would say, boo, if we were one of those old theaters. Despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn where he took care of him. The next day he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm here. Now, which of the 3 would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by the bandits? Jesus asked. The man he was talking to replied, well, the one who showed him mercy. Then Jesus said, yes, now go and do the same. You see, that parable we're all familiar with, and it preaches in so many different ways. We could talk about so many of the prejudices and so many of the things going on here. I really just want to look at the overall picture. The point is, if you see someone in need, help them. It's really that simple. When you see someone in need, don't be too proud, too arrogant, or too whatever to get off your donkey and help him. You're welcome. That was the more appropriate way to say that, right? I did. Go and do. That's the point. When you see someone in need, go and fill the need. Help them out. Jesus didn't just tell stories about this, though. Jesus didn't just tell good stories, he also lived it. A great illustration of this is whenever he washes the disciples' feet. John 13, he washes their feet. Picking up the story after he washed his feet, he put on his robe again, sat down and asked, "Do you understand what I was doing? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, because that's what I am. And since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I have given you an example to follow. Do as I have done for you." Jesus is the Lord and Master, rightfully so. He's the one that could have commanded anyone in that room to wash his feet. Yet, instead, he lives what he's been preaching to them. Those in Christ who follow Christ serve as Christ serves. He did not lord it over anybody, that he was the Lord of everybody. He simply put on the servant's garments and got to washing feet. The lowliest of low jobs. And he says, "Do as I have done for you." Now, I don't believe that Jesus is limiting our service to the simple act of foot washing, although that might be necessary and needed. I think it serves as a metaphor that when we see a need, we fill a need. When we see something, we help, we serve. Perhaps the theological reason will be the biggest one for you. We see Jesus talk about it as an illustration with the Good Samaritan. We see him live it out in the washing of the disciples' feet. But in another parable, he talks about the ramifications, the eternal ramifications of whether we help or not. It comes in the parable whenever on the judgment day he separates the sheep from the goats. And part of the story says it this way. Then the king will say to those on his right, which are the sheep, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, and inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, and you've invited me into your home. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous ones will reply, "Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink, or a stranger and show you hospitality, or naked and give you clothing? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?" And the king will say this, and listen, "I tell you the truth, when you did it for one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me." Not just for me, but to me. You see what he's saying here? Here's the tie. He says, "Welcome, come on in, you who are righteous, you who are blessed by my Father. For," some translations say, "because," this is the tying clause, "you are welcomed because this." And he lists a lot of ways that they have, in short, helped others. They are welcomed for helping. We, especially in the churches of Christ, have spent a lot of deal and time talking about how to get to heaven. And that's not a bad subject. Please don't get me wrong. That's a great thing to talk about. How do we get there? What do we need to do? This parable serves perfectly for a people like us. You want something to do? You help others. Now, that doesn't mean that you buy and earn your salvation by your helping. Please understand. We've already dealt with that before, but I just want to deal with that again. You do this because you are saved. We do this because we are being like Christ, not to earn Christ's approval, but because we are like Christ, we serve in this way. And in the end, the sheep are going to be recognized because they look like the shepherd, because they smell like the shepherd. When you help the least of these, you are doing it to me. In other words, we serve Jesus by serving others. Sometimes we forget how important helping others is to God. how important it is to following God. Our individualistic culture has robbed us of the understanding that we are all in this together. One of my favorite things that has come from the pandemic is that phrase. Now, granted, that phrase has been muddied in some ways, but saying, well, we're not all the same, we're not all in this perfectly together. No. But the thing is, we are all in this life together. We are all navigating the craziness of this life, and we are meant to do it together. Help one another. Just like a farmer who wants the seed to thrive, he has to prepare the ground to be good soil. In the same way, if we want the message of Christ to survive in a world that is hostile to Christianity, we've got to prepare the soil. We've got to work and help people. We need to stop being so selfish, start seeing the needs of others. This doesn't mean that it's a foolproof way, but every time we help someone, hearts are softened. Theirs and yours. And maybe even more yours than theirs, quite often. But in our society, in my own life, I can ask the question, how many times have you denied help to someone? How many times have you made an excuse of why I can't help them right now? Maybe you were in a hurry. We talked about that a few weeks ago, that we quit being in a hurry. Maybe you didn't think they deserved your help. They were just going to squander the money that you might give them on booze and wild living. They were just going to not do a thing with it. It wouldn't really help them if I gave them whatever they might need. They don't deserve it. Maybe that tied into some of your views on ethnicities. You didn't help them because they were of a wrong ethnicity, whatever that might be for you. Maybe they're Hispanic, maybe they're African American, or maybe they're whatever. Maybe you didn't help. Maybe the excuse that you didn't help is because it wasn't safe to do such. They weren't wearing a mask, and I really only want to be around people that wear masks right now. Understand. But have you denied help to someone based upon safety? I will support you in that decision if you can find a place in Scripture where Jesus denied someone help for safety reasons, because he might have been unsafe. Now, that doesn't just apply to masks. Let me tell you, that applies to every one of us. There has been some times whenever I have justified driving by someone because I'm like, oh, dude, my girls are in the car. I don't know what might happen. And therein lies the problem. Because I let my fear speak into the situation. I don't know what might happen is also just as good of an excuse of saying, we might be preparing good soil with this person that now will become a disciple of Christ, but I am denying him that opportunity because I'm scared in that moment. How many times have we denied helping others simply for whatever reason we can come up with? If we're going to grow in our discipleship, we need to open up our eyes and see there are needs around us. But more than see them, we actually have to help. We actually have to serve. And one more thing. We need to help and serve with no strings attached. We are not some salesman pitch idea. Here, let me vacuum this one floor for you. You'll see how awesome this is so you can buy this vacuum. We're not doing that, a bait and switch with Christianity. Oh, we'll help put floors in your home if you come to church with us. No. When we do that, we deny everything that Christ stands for. We make Christ up to be just something that we're selling and not something we're living. We help others. We serve others simply for one reason and one fact alone: Christ did. No strings attached. I'm just trying to be like Christ. I'm trying to be more of a disciple and create more disciples. And Jesus served, so I serve. So I dare you. I dare you this week to find any and every way you can help someone. Find and be open for wherever God is leading you, whoever God puts in your path to help someone. It may be scary at times, but we do have a church family. We do have resources among us that might be able to help and alleviate some of that fear. Maybe we can go in together if it's scared to be alone. But don't let those excuses stop you from serving. I dare you to help. And if you need some help this morning, would you let it be known? Come as we stand and sing together.